of age in a different time, when having information at one's fingertips meant referencing World Book encyclopedias purchased from door-to-door salesmen. A time when pornography meant girly magazines, sexism was rampant, and sexual harassment was considered harmless flirtation. It was also a time when the help wanted section of the newspaper was often an entire section of the newspaper, because this was how most people found a job. I was a product of these times in most respects, with one serious exception. I had access to a pre-internet version of LinkedIn. My mother. Mom had given birth to 5 children in 7 years. And when all 5 of us reached our teens and money was tight, we needed jobs. Mom was the woman to find them. Each year, mid-May, she began scouring help-wanted advertisements in the local papers using a child-specific color-coded system to circle relevant opportunities. And she used all of her connections, neighbors, friends, parents of her school children, the mailman, the checkout ladies at the grocery store with whom she was on a first-name basis. You never know, she'd say. It doesn't hurt to ask. I started cleaning apartments for retirees when I was 13. At 16, Mom volunteered me as an auction item for a church fundraiser, as a vacation nanny so I could get my name out there. One year, I became an expert in replacement parts for those massive blue industrial floor cleaning machines you see in parking garages after working in tenant company customer support. My older brother was an airport security agent. My oldest sister was a nighttime janitor. My little brother was the guy that filled in for vacationing mailmen. And my other sister, the creative one, spent 3 months painting false teeth. My mother was a firm believer that you can learn something from every job because experience is the best teacher. The summer I was 17, I needed to make serious bank. If I wanted to go off to college, I'd have to pay for all my discretionary expenses and pony up $1,500 for tuition. When the first week of summer arrived, I had one job lined up at the cookie factory in the local mall. Having already worked there for 2 years, I had burn scars on my biceps from removing huge trays of cookies from the circular oven at the front of the store. I'd also moved up the cookie factory ladder of success. From baking to selling to the coveted position of front window decorator. Displayed in a 5x6 window onto the mall, I would roll parchment tubes, fill them with vile, sugary icing in impossible hues, cobalt blue, lemon yellow, Pepto-Bismol pink, and adorn tray after tray of cookies with Ernie's and Bert's, rainbows and cookie monsters. It was a solid minimum wage job, which in 1981 was about $3 an hour. Not even enough for my tuition contribution, let alone spending money. I needed something more, much more. This is a good one, my mom said one morning as she sat across from me at the kitchen table. Up to $15 an hour for a hostess position. It's at that restaurant on the way to the airport. You know, that expensive steak place where businessmen go for lunch. I called and pretended I was you. She smiled. And you have an interview today at 11:45. The woman was very friendly. She said to wear nice shoes, preferably high heels. High heels? That's kind of odd. Oh, yes, I suppose, but $15 an hour, Mom said. That's worth having to wear uncomfortable shoes for a couple of hours. At 12 o'clock, I was standing in a large closet behind the real hostess stand at the steak place, staring at a rack of lingerie. Incredibly small strips of lacy fabric in bright colors that reminded me of the icing at the cookie factory. Pick any of these outfits, said the head hostess, the one who actually seated people. You can change in here. Just stand behind the door in case one of the other girls opens it while you're undressed. One of the other girls, a woman in her late 20s with long dark hair, an impossibly small waist, and even more impossibly large breasts, gave me a bored glance as she slithered into a ruby red negligee. The head hostess went on. And then you'll walk around the tables and model the clothing. Make conversation with the diners. Make them feel comfortable. Make them feel comfortable, I thought? Walking around in underwear while they eat steaks and drink martinis? Make sure you look at the price tag before you go out. If they buy something for their wife or girlfriend or maybe for you, then you get a commission. So you have to keep track here. She pointed to a list on the back of the door. The tissue paper is for wrapping things up at the end. Deliver the merchandise and give the price to the waitress. She'll add it to the bill. The head hostess stood there, watching me. I stood there, staring at the rack of lingerie, trying to figure out how to escape. And then I spied it, a pale purple velour tracksuit. I ducked behind the door, stripped down, and put it on. I studied the other two hostesses walking around the heavily air-conditioned dining room in high heels and not much else. I tried to copy their devil-may-care attitude and casual conversation. I did not carry it off well, and clearly hadn't considered the incongruity of high heels with a tracksuit. Somehow, though, I managed to sell the elegant yet surprisingly comfortable velour casual wear. Twice. Once for a guy's wife, once for myself, if I promised to wear something a little more revealing on the next pass. I returned to the closet with no intention of going back out, but mentally calculating my commission, only to learn I couldn't sell an item twice. The head hostess shook her big hair. We only have one of those suits, honey, but wow, 2 sales your first time out? You're a natural. Here, she said, handing me a Pepto-Bismol pink bra and panties. Tell the guy to buy you this instead. I had learned in 8 minutes that it's possible to feel completely exposed in a tracksuit. This was a job I could not do. I'm sorry, I said, handing back the bra and panties. I just can't. Oh my God, my mother said when I returned home and told her about my short-lived hostess gig. Oh, sweetheart, I never would have sent you there. You should have just left. She enveloped me in her arms. Then pulling back, she added, no wonder they wanted to know how tall you were and what you weighed. What? I said. Mom, you didn't mention that. I could hear my older sister, the nighttime janitor, laughing in the next room. Well, I never imagined. Who would have thought that? For a grown woman with 5 children, my mother was notoriously naive. But it's just as well, she went on, because I was talking to Jeannie Beaumont. Her husband's the one whose secretary has to have her gallbladder removed, and she'll be out for 8 weeks starting Monday, which is such a shame. But for you, it's perfect timing. And they'll pay you $8 an hour. Oh, and I found this too. She pointed to another ad in a circular that had been delivered while I was hawking my wares to 2 martini lunch businessmen. It's a waitress job at JoJo's on Elmhurst Road over by the pool. It's for the graveyard shift. So there it was. My summer as a working girl, all divvied up. Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 in an accountant's office as a temporary secretary. Saturday and Sunday, days from 11 to 5, displayed in a window, dressed in a polyester yellow and orange striped uniform, decorating cookies. And Friday and Saturday nights. From 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., pulling at the short skirt of a brown peasant dress with white lace over the bosom, serving drunks from 11 to 3, and policemen and early risers from 5 o'clock on. Working the graveyard shift was better than peddling lingerie, but only slightly. First of all, there were the drunks. While everyone else was sleeping, I was in a dimly lit, second-rate Denny's with a bar, serving men whose hands gravitated to my upper thigh when my own hands were holding their hot plates of food. Men prone to saying things like, "Give me your number and I'll give you a tip." Perhaps worst of all, though, was the lechy manager, Mr. Deutsch, aged 30 to my 17, who always managed to find me alone, particularly between the hours of 3 and 5 when JoJo's was dead. He would trap me in the corner while I was consolidating the condiments, or suddenly show up, snapping a damp towel at my bare legs as I bent over to wipe down a booth. "How about some help?" he'd say in this voice that made my skin crawl. I suppose I should have seen it coming. The comments, which he clearly viewed as compliments, had started the day he'd hired me when he inked over the 3 in the 63 of my birth year with a 2, instantly making me 18 and able to serve alcohol. "I can't wait to see you in this," he'd said as he handed me the shortest uniform hanging in the closet. At least it isn't lingerie, I thought at the time. The compliments increased over the summer, along with hands-on shows of appreciation. Gentle rebuffs and mentions of my boyfriend were ignored. Going to my manager, Mr. Deutsch, to complain about Mr. Deutsch, clearly not an option. The only saving grace at JoJo's was the other all-night waitress, a die-hard graveyard girl that worked midnight till 8, 5 days a week. Watching her, I began to learn essential survival techniques, the art of delivering a friendly yet stinging slap to a wayward hand, giving out a fake phone number with a smile, and killing the already dead hours with baking. From 3 until 5, she and I would escape into the kitchen and we would bake brownies, cakes, and you guessed it, cookies. One night towards the end of the summer, the other waitress had just gone on her mid-shift break, leaving me to finish up the last of a batch of chocolate chip cookies. As I bent over to get the cookie tray out of the hot oven, industrial oven mitts covering my hands, my peasant dress barely covering my ass, I felt him behind me, right behind me, Mr. Deutsch. "How about some help?" he said, his hands on my hips, his breath on my neck, his hard-on pressed against me. 4 a.m., caught between a dick and a hot place. I certainly didn't need Mr. Deutsch's help or his dick, but I needed the job. I needed the money. Or did I? In one motion, I straightened up, spun around, and shoved the tray towards Mr. Deutsch, saying, "Yes, thanks." I had experience with cookie trays and getting burned. Mr. Deutsch did not. At least, not yet. My mother was right. Experience is the best teacher.